A billionaire heir buys an abandoned restaurant but is shocked to discover, in the basement, a little girl taking care of twin babies. The revelations that follow change his life forever. The reflection in the skyscraper's glass showed the same face as always. Tired green eyes, a tense jaw, and an expression that not even a multi-billion-dollar fortune could soften. Jack Morrison adjusted his Italian silk tie, a nervous habit he repeated whenever he felt uneasy. Down below, New York City pulsed in a chaotic symphony of honking cars and restless life. Up here, on the 45th floor, silence was almost absolute. "Mr. Morrison, the board meeting starts in 5 minutes." His assistant's voice echoed through the intercom. Jack sighed, gazing at the city stretching all the way to the horizon. At 35, he owned a business empire his father had spent decades building, and yet he felt as empty as the countless glasses of whiskey he drained on lonely nights in his penthouse on the Upper East Side. "Let them know I'm on my way, Sandra," he replied mechanically, picking up his high-tech tablet. Another meeting. More numbers, more acquisitions, more of everything that didn't fill the void growing in his chest. The panoramic elevator descended smoothly through the floors of the most prestigious building on Park Avenue. Jack watched his own reflection in the mirror, trying to remember the last time he truly smiled. How long had it been? 6 months? A year? Recent memories blurred into a muddle of business dinners, endless meetings, and lonely nights. In the conference room, the Italian leather chairs were occupied by the same faces as always, executives in suits who barely hid their envy of the young heir. Jack took his seat at the head of the table, starting his presentation with the same rehearsed energy as ever. "Our third quarter exceeded expectations by 15%, his voice resonated, while the charts danced on the screen. "Our expansion in the sector." That was when his glance caught something outside the window. Across the street, an old building drew his attention. It wasn't the Art Deco architecture that captivated him, but a faded sign that still showed remnants of a restaurant name. Flavors of Memory. The name awakened something inside him, long-buried memories of Sundays in his grandmother's kitchen, the smell of homemade sauce, and the smile of his father, not the tough businessman he became, but the man who used to play with him while his mother prepared Sunday lunch. "Mr. Morrison." A director's voice brought him back to reality. Jack cleared his throat, continuing his presentation, but his mind kept drifting back to that faded sign. Something about that place called to him, like a distant melody he couldn't get out of his head. After the meeting, instead of returning to his office, Jack stayed in the empty conference room, eyes fixed on the building across the street. Sandra entered quietly, leaving another folder on his desk. "Sandra," he called, without taking his eyes off the window. "Find out everything about that restaurant. Flavors of Memory. I want to know if it's for sale." "But sir, the report can wait." That night, in his Upper East Side penthouse, Jack poured himself his usual 30-year-old scotch, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't to drown frustrations. In his hands, a brown envelope contained all the information about the restaurant, closed 5 years ago. Previous owner deceased, unresolved family disputes. The price? A pittance for someone with his fortune. His eyes scanned the illuminated city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. New York never slept, and neither did he. But tonight felt different. Tonight, for the first time in years, Jack Morrison felt something beyond his usual emptiness. It was as if that abandoned restaurant was calling him, promising something all his money could never buy, a sense of purpose. With a decisive gesture, he picked up the phone. "Sandra, prepare the documents to purchase the restaurant. I don't care what it costs. I want the deal closed as soon as possible." He hung up before his assistant could protest. Tomorrow he would visit the place. For now, he stayed there, savoring his scotch and imagining the possibilities. Maybe, just maybe, that abandoned restaurant was exactly what he needed to fill the void in his life. What Jack didn't know, as he looked out at the sleeping city, was that his impulsive decision was about to change his life in ways he could never imagine. Sometimes, the greatest treasures are found in the most unexpected places, like an abandoned restaurant with stories yet to be told. The key turned in the lock with a metallic creak that echoed through the empty building. Jack Morrison hesitated for a moment before pushing open the heavy wooden door of Flavors of Memory. The air inside was thick, laden with stories and years of neglect. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing tables covered by dusty white sheets. His footsteps echoed on the wooden floor, each creak telling a different story. The walls, though peeling, still held traces of elegant wallpaper, with patterns reminiscent of intertwined vines. "So this is my new project," he murmured to himself, his voice sounding strangely small in the empty space. In the bar area, empty bottles still lined the shelves, their labels faded over time. Jack ran his fingers over the solid wood counter, imagining the stories the place must have witnessed. He could almost hear the clinking of glasses, the laughter of patrons, the soft music lightly played on the busiest nights. The kitchen was a large space, filled with industrial equipment covered by a thick layer of dust. Even so, Jack could see its potential. The stainless steel counters, though tarnished, were high quality. The industrial stove, silent for years, seemed ready to come back to life. That was when he heard it. A sound so faint he initially thought it was his imagination, a murmur, a lullaby. Jack froze, straining his ears. The sound was coming from somewhere below him. Was there a basement? After a few minutes of searching, he found a discreet door near the pantry. Wooden steps spiraled downward, plunging into darkness. The sound grew clearer now, definitely a lullaby, sung by a child's voice. His heart pounded. Children, in the basement of his abandoned restaurant. "Hello?" he called, descending the steps cautiously. "Is anyone there?" The singing stopped abruptly. Jack heard quick movements, as if someone was hiding. The basement was surprisingly clean and organized, considering the state of the rest of the building. In one corner, he noticed an old mattress with some folded blankets. There was also a small collection of worn-out toys and a few children's books neatly stacked. "It's okay," Jack said in a gentle voice. "I just want to help." A movement behind a battered bookcase caught his attention. Slowly, a small girl emerged from the shadows. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, but her eyes held a maturity beyond her years. She wore clean clothes, though visibly worn, and her hair was carefully braided into 2 pigtails. "Are you the new owner?" she asked, her voice surprisingly firm for someone so young. Jack nodded, still trying to process the situation. "My name is Jack, and you are—" "Emily," she answered, taking a step forward. Then, as if making an important decision, she turned and said, "You can come out." "He seems nice." To Jack's complete astonishment, 2 babies, no more than a year old, emerged from behind the bookcase. They were identical twins, with golden curls and sleepy blue eyes. "These are Thomas and Theo," Emily introduced, with the seriousness of a seasoned hostess. "I take care of them." Jack felt his world spin. A 5-year-old girl, alone, taking care of 2 babies in an abandoned basement? "Emily," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Where are your parents?" The girl's face closed for a moment. "Mommy's in heaven now. The restaurant belonged to her. Daddy, I never met him." Jack felt a lump in his throat. "And you're all here alone? Who looks after you?" Emily squared her shoulders, a gesture that would have been comical in another situation, but now broke his heart. "I look after us. I know how to make bottles, change diapers, everything. The lady from the corner store sometimes brings us food. She promised not to tell anyone we live here, because then they'd separate us." One of the twins, Thomas or Theo, Jack still couldn't tell, started whimpering. With surprising efficiency, Emily produced a pre-made bottle and handed it to the baby, who took it eagerly. "You can't stay here," Jack said, more to himself than to her. "Please," Emily's eyes filled with tears, "don't call the police. I don't want them to take my brothers away." Something inside Jack broke and reassembled in the same instant. His entire life, his entire corporate empire, all his achievements felt hollow in the face of this tiny girl, carrying the world on her shoulders. "Emily," he knelt to her eye level, "what if I told you I have a big house, with too many empty rooms for just one person, a house with a kitchen full of food and hot water bathrooms. Her eyes widened. I mean maybe we can help each other. You and your brothers need a safe place to stay, and He paused, realizing the truth in his own words. I need a family. Emily looked at the twins, then back at Jack, weighing the proposal with a seriousness no 5-year-old should ever have. Can we bring our toys? She finally asked. Jack felt a genuine smile, his first in years, spread across his face. We can bring anything you want, and buy more. Minutes later, Jack found himself climbing the basement stairs with a baby in each arm, while Emily followed behind, carrying her precious collection of books. It was crazy, of course. There would be legal issues, investigations, endless problems. Sandra would probably have a meltdown when she found out. But when Emily took his hand as they reached his car, when the twins snuggled sleepily against his chest, Jack knew he had made the right decision. For the first time in his adult life, he felt something real, something important, something no bank account could ever buy. Ready to go home? He asked Emily, helping her into the back seat of his Porsche, now serving as a family vehicle. She nodded, hugging her books. Home, she repeated, as if testing how the word sounded. It's been a while since we had one of those. Driving through the New York night with 3 children sleeping in his luxury car, Jack Morrison, lonely billionaire, empty air, the man who had everything and nothing at the same time, felt his heart fill with something he didn't immediately recognize. It was purpose. It was meaning. It was the beginning of a new life. What he did not yet know was that by trying to save 3 little lives abandoned in a basement, he was, in fact, saving himself. The private elevator to the penthouse opened silently into an apartment that, until that night, Jack Morrison had never really considered a home. The 6,000 square feet of minimalist luxury, with its grey and white decor, felt even colder and more impersonal now that he was carrying 2 sleeping children in his arms. Wow, Emily whispered, her wide eyes reflecting the city lights coming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It looks like those apartments in the magazines Mommy used to look at. Jack looked at his own space through her eyes, and for the first time, truly saw what was missing. There were no vibrant colors, no photos on the walls, no sign that anyone actually lived here. It was a showroom of perfect interior design, utterly devoid of soul. Come on, he said gently, trying not to wake the twins. I'll show you where we'll sleep. Emily followed him down the hallway, her small footsteps echoing on the Italian marble floor. She stopped occasionally to admire some detail. A black grand piano that served only as decor, an abstract sculpture that had cost more than many luxury cars, a built-in aquarium housing only exotic fish, and none of the colorful decorations typically found in children's tanks. Your apartment is pretty, she remarked upon reaching the master bedroom, but it feels a bit sad. The observation hit Jack like a punch to the gut. That was exactly it, sad. How had he never realized it before? The master bedroom was equally minimalist, with a king-size bed dressed in Egyptian cotton sheets in shades of gray, and a panoramic view of New York. Jack began settling the twins in the center of the bed, but Emily quickly intervened. No, no, she instructed with the authority of a seasoned babysitter. They can roll over. We need a barrier. Jack watched, fascinated, as she methodically arranged pillows and cushions to create a safe nest for the babies. Her movements were precise and confident, as though she'd done this 100 times before, which, he realized with a pang, was probably true. You're really good at this, he commented, helping place the last pillow. Emily shrugged, but a small, proud smile flickered across her lips. I had to learn quickly when Mommy got sick. The doctors said she needed rest, so I took care of the baby so she could sleep. Before Jack could fully process the weight of that information, one of the twins, he still couldn't tell which, started stirring, his face twisting into an expression Emily immediately recognized. That's Thomas, she informed. He always wakes up first for a bottle. As if on cue, Thomas opened his eyes and started whimpering. The sound seemed absurdly loud in the silence of the apartment, and Jack felt a momentary panic. What was he supposed to do? How do you calm a crying baby? Emily, however, was already in motion. "We need to make a bottle," she declared, grabbing her worn-out backpack. "Where's your kitchen?" Jack's kitchen was a study in stainless steel and black marble, with state-of-the-art appliances rarely used for anything beyond espresso and the occasional reheated delivery meal. Emily looked around with professional interest, like a chef assessing a new workspace. "Mommy would have loved a kitchen like this," she commented, taking out a carefully stored container of powdered formula from her bag. "She always said a good kitchen is the heart of a home." Jack watched as she took charge of the situation with disconcerting ease. Even needing a makeshift step stool to reach the sink, he quickly improvised with an empty wine box. Emily moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "First, you boil the water," she explained, like a patient teacher guiding a new student. "But you have to let it cool a bit, otherwise it burns their mouths. Mommy taught me to test it on my wrist. If it's too hot for my wrist, it's too hot for the baby." Jack absorbed every word, acutely aware of the strange role reversal taking place. Here he was, a man who ran a corporate empire, learning the basics of childcare from a 5-year-old. "Now," Emily continued, measuring the formula precisely, "it's 2 scoops for every ounce of water. You have to mix well, no lumps." As she prepared the bottle, she started sharing more about her mother, Linda. It was as if teaching Jack had opened a door to her memories, and now they flowed freely. "Mommy was the best cook in the world," she declared with absolute conviction. "She could make anything taste good, even broccoli, and I used to hate broccoli." Jack smiled, suddenly recalling his own grandmother's almost magical ability to turn simple ingredients into memorable meals. "My grandma was the same way," he found himself saying. "She made a tomato sauce that filled the entire house with its smell." Emily's eyes lit up with interest. "Mommy's sauce was like that too. She taught me the secret was letting it simmer slowly with love, and it always had to have fresh basil. She grew it in the backyard of the restaurant." As the night wore on, more stories emerged. Between bottle feedings and diaper changes, another skill Emily had astonishingly mastered, Jack discovered the world of flavors of memory through the eyes of a child who had grown up among its tables and pots. "We had customers who came every Sunday," Emily said, rocking Theo while Thomas dozed off contentedly. "Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Miller always ordered the special lasagna. Mommy made it with super thin pasta she called silk dough, and Mr. Roberts, he was allergic to shrimp but loved seafood, so Mommy created a special dish just for him with fish and mussels." Jack could visualize each scene she described, the restaurant full of life, families occupying the tables, the aroma of lovingly prepared food filling the air. It was so different from the abandoned place he'd found, yet through Emily's words, it felt more real than ever. "What was it like working in the kitchen with your mom?" he asked, genuinely interested. Emily's face lit up at the memory. "It was the best thing ever. I even had my own apron, all white with my name embroidered on it. Mommy said I was her special sous chef." She paused, adjusting Theo in her arms with the skill of a professional nanny. "I started helping with small things, washing lettuce, separating ingredients, but then Mommy taught me more. I could make the basic sauce by myself, and she was starting to teach me how to make pasta when—" Her voice faltered, and Jack felt his heart clench. Gently, he took Theo from her arms, surprised at how natural the gesture already felt. "You must miss her a lot," he said softly. Emily nodded, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. "Sometimes I wake up and for a second forget she's gone. Then I remember I have to be strong for the babies. Mommy made me promise I'd always take care of them." Jack knelt in front of her, balancing Theo in one arm while using his free hand to wipe away her tears. "Emily, you've been stronger than any child should ever have to be. Now you can share some of that responsibility with me, okay?" She studied him with those ancient eyes in a young face. "Do you promise you won't separate us? That you'll let us stay together?" "I promise," Jack answered without hesitation, surprised by the certainty in his own voice. "You 3 are a family, and families should stay together." A small smile appeared on Emily's face. "Then you're family now too," she declared, with the simple logic of children. "Because you're taking care of us." Those words hit Jack with an unexpected force. Family. When was the last time that word had meant something real to him? His parents were alive, of course, but their relationship had long since become purely professional. Christmas was an occasion to discuss financial results. Birthdays were remembered by assistants, marked by generic cards and expensive yet impersonal gifts. The night wore on, and the first signs of exhaustion appeared on Emily's face, though she fought bravely against sleep. Jack realized they needed to settle the sleeping arrangements. "You can have my bed," he offered. "I'll sleep on the couch." But Emily shook her head. "I need to be near the babies. We always sleep together." She then proceeded to organize her little space on the floor beside the twins' makeshift nest. Her movements were methodical and efficient, speaking of months of practice. Jack watched in awe as she turned a few blankets into a surprisingly cozy bed. "See? Now I can reach both of them if they cry during the night," she explained. Proud of her ingenuity, Jack sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, simply observing as Emily finally gave in to sleep. Even asleep, one of her hands remained outstretched toward her brother's, a silent anchor of protection. His phone vibrated again, probably Sandra, still trying to figure out why he'd missed 3 important meetings today. But for the first time in his adult life, Jack didn't feel compelled to respond right away. The corporate world, which until yesterday had been his entire universe, suddenly felt distant and less urgent. His thoughts drifted to the restaurant. Now he saw it through different eyes, not just as a potential investment, but as a place filled with memories, family, and love for food and people. Emily's stories had given life to the empty walls and filled the abandoned space with laughter and the aromas of meals prepared with care. He remembered his own childhood, the rare occasions his grandmother managed to gather the family for Sunday lunch, the smell of homemade tomato sauce, the sound of dough being kneaded on a sturdy wooden table, the laughter around the table. When exactly had he lost that connection to food, to family, to the simple pleasure of a shared meal? Emily shifted in her sleep, murmuring something about fresh basil. Jack smiled, realizing it might not have been a coincidence that he found these children in that particular restaurant. Perhaps Flavors of Memory was meant to be more than just another acquisition in his portfolio. In the restaurant's silent kitchen, under layers of dust and neglect, there were stories waiting to be rediscovered. In Emily's memories of her mother, there were lessons not just about cooking, but about love, family, and purpose. And maybe, Jack thought, he had something to learn from those lessons too. He closed his eyes, letting the comforting silence of the bedroom envelop him. Tomorrow there would be much to do: shopping for the children, legal arrangements, endless explanations for Sandra and the board. But now, in this moment, for the first time in years, he felt at peace. His last thought before falling asleep right there, sitting on his bedroom floor, was about recipes. Maybe, if Emily agreed to teach him, he could learn to make that sauce that needed to simmer slowly, with love. After all, as Linda had taught her daughter, sometimes the simplest ingredients, combined with care and patience, could create something extraordinary. Dawn was breaking when Emily woke briefly, seeing Jack asleep on the floor. For a moment, she watched him with the same intensity he had watched her hours before. Then, silently, she took one of her blankets and covered him gently. "Mommy," she whispered into the silent room, "I think you'd like him. He has sad eyes like you did sometimes, but I think we can help with that. You always said the best recipe for sadness is family, good food and lots of love, right?" The first rays of sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the room where 4 unlikely people were beginning their journey as a family. Outside, New York was waking to another busy day. But inside that room, in the hush of the early morning, something extraordinary had already happened. A man who had everything but what truly mattered had found his way home through the love of 3 small orphans and the memories of an abandoned restaurant. Jack Morrison stared at his laptop screen, trying to focus on the numbers from his latest acquisition, While Thomas and Theo played on his imported Persian rug, Emily was seated at the dining table, concentrating on homework from her new school. 2 weeks had passed since the children arrived in his life, and his once minimalist apartment now looked like a colorful battlefield. Toys decorated the previously immaculate floor. Children's drawings were taped to the stainless steel fridge. The grand piano, once purely decorative, now served as a fortress for the twins' teddy bears. Even his home office had been invaded by crayons and storybooks. "Mr. Morrison," Sandra's voice echoed from the laptop, pulling him back into the reality of the video conference. "The investors are waiting for your decision on the merger." Jack opened his mouth to answer, but was interrupted by a piercing cry. Theo had tripped while trying to take his first steps. Within seconds, Jack was on the floor consoling the baby. "I'm sorry," he said to the screen full of executives. "Could we reschedule for—" Theo's crying intensified, and Emily quickly joined them on the floor. "Did he hit his head?" she asked worriedly, her small hands expertly checking her brother. "Sandra, we'll have to continue this tomorrow," Jack decided, closing the laptop without waiting for a response. A few weeks ago, the idea of interrupting an important meeting would have been unthinkable. Now it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "It's okay, champ," he murmured to Theo, who was already calming down in his arms. "You'll get it next time." Emily smiled as she watched. "You're getting good at this," she said. "You used to take longer to calm them down." Jack felt a wave of pride at the compliment. It was true, he was learning. The sleepless nights, the clumsy diaper changes, the perfectly prepared bottles, all of it now felt as normal as the board meetings and business dinners once had. His phone buzzed, another urgent email from Sandra. Jack ignored it, preferring to watch Thomas, who was now attempting his own hesitant steps, inspired by his brother. "You know," Emily said thoughtfully, helping Thomas balance, "Mommy always said sometimes the best things in life happen when we least expect them." Jack looked at her, surprised by the depth of her statement. "Your mother seemed like a very wise woman." "She was," Emily confirmed, her gaze momentarily distant. Then, as if making a big decision, she added, "I think she'd be happy knowing you're taking care of us now." "Dad." The world stopped. Jack froze, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. What did you call me?" Emily bit her lip, suddenly unsure. "Sorry, I shouldn't have—" "No," Jack interrupted quickly, his voice shaking. "Don't apologize, you caught me by surprise." She studied him with those old eyes in a young face. "It's just, you act like a dad, a real dad. You play with the twins, help me with homework, make food for us, even though you're still not very good at cooking," she added with a small smile. Jack laughed through the tears he hadn't realized he was shedding. It was true, his attempts in the kitchen were at best interesting, but he was learning, just like he was learning everything else about being a father. "Emily," he began, choosing his words carefully, "I would be honored to be your dad, for all 3 of you, if that's what you want." In response, Emily threw her arms around him, nearly knocking Theo over in the process. "I do want that," she whispered into his chest. "So much." At that moment, as if sensing the importance of what was happening, the twins joined the hug, their baby laughs filling the apartment that had once been so silent. The phone buzzed again, but Jack barely noticed. Sitting on the floor of his luxury apartment, holding 3 children who had completely changed his life, he finally understood what it meant to be truly rich. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Jack allowed himself a moment of reflection. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions and adaptations. His wardrobe of Italian suits now shared space with clothes stained by baby food. His meetings were often interrupted by crying or laughter. His time was split between financial reports and bedtime stories, and he had never been happier. Sandra had suggested hiring a full-time nanny, arguing it would be more efficient for his business, but Jack refused. He wanted to be there for every moment, every first time, every little milestone. The business could wait, his family could not. Family. The word still surprised him sometimes. How had 3 orphans found in a restaurant basement become so essential to his existence so quickly? A soft noise pulled him from his thoughts. Emily stood at the bedroom door, clutching her favorite teddy bear. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently. She shook her head, stepping inside. "I had a dream about Mommy," she said, climbing onto the bed next to him. She was smiling. Jack hugged her, feeling his heart tighten. "Do you want to tell me about it?" "We were in the restaurant," Emily began, snuggling against him. "She was cooking, and you were there too, learning to make her special sauce. She said she was happy because now we have you to take care of us." Jack swallowed the lump in his throat. "I promise I'll always take care of you," he whispered. "Always." Emily smiled sleepily. "I know, Dad." "I know." And there, with Emily falling asleep in his arms, Jack Morrison, the relentless CEO, the lonely billionaire, the man who once put business above everything, realized he had finally found his true purpose in life. It wasn't in million-dollar contracts or corporate acquisitions. It was in the sleepy smiles of the twins, in bedtime stories, in the small daily victories of learning to be a father. It was in the way Emily looked at him with absolute trust, in how the twins ran to him when he got home, in the way she said "Dad" with so much love and certainty. The sun was rising over New York, painting the sky with pinkish hues. In a few hours, the twins would wake up demanding their bottles. Emily would need help with more homework, and his phone would keep ringing with work demands. But Jack now knew exactly where his priorities lay. Because sometimes the best things in life really do happen when we least expect them. And sometimes the love of a family is all we need to feel complete. The aroma of tomato sauce filled the apartment's kitchen, mingling with Emily's laughter and the babbling of the twins. Jack watched, amazed, as his little 5-year-old chef patiently explained the steps of the recipe. "No, Dad," she laughed, placing her hand over his on the wooden spoon. "You have to stir with love, remember? Mommy always said restaurant food never tastes the same as homemade food. It's missing the love." Jack grinned, adjusting his technique according to her directions. It was Saturday afternoon, and his kitchen, previously pristine and barely used, now looked like a culinary battlefield. Sauce splatters stained the apron Emily insisted he wear, and there was flour even in his usually immaculate hair. "You know," he remarked, as Emily supervised his stirring of the sauce, "maybe it's time for us to take a look at the restaurant. See what needs to be done to reopen it." Emily's eyes shone. "Really? We can make it like it was before? With checkered tablecloths and pictures on the walls?" "Sure," Jack replied, surprised by his own enthusiasm. "Actually, I was thinking of going there tomorrow. What do you think?" Before Emily could answer, the doorbell rang. Jack frowned. He wasn't expecting visitors. Emily quickly grabbed the twins, who were playing in their makeshift playpen in the kitchen, instinctively slipping into protective big sister mode. When Jack opened the door, his heart momentarily froze. Richard Morrison, his father, stood in the hallway, his imposing figure softened only by the uncertain expression on his face. "Dad?" Jack managed to say, aware of the sauce on his apron and the flour in his hair. Richard cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Sandra told me about the children, and about the restaurant." Before Jack could reply, Emily appeared at his side, still holding the twins. "Hi," she greeted with her usual confidence. "Are you Dad's dad?" Richard Morrison's gaze softened visibly upon seeing the children. "Yes, I am, and you must be Emily." "Come in, Dad," Jack heard himself say, surprising even himself. "We were making tomato sauce." The scene that followed was surreal. Richard Morrison, the feared business magnate, sat in a messy kitchen watching his granddaughter teach his son to cook. The twins, unimpressed by their grandfather's reputation, quickly adopted him as their new favorite toy. "Remember when Grandma used to make sauce like this?" Richard commented softly after a few minutes of silence. "On Sundays." Jack stopped stirring the sauce, memories long buried surfacing. "I remember. You were always late coming from work, but she'd wait to serve until you arrived. And you would sit on the counter, just like she's doing now." Richard nodded toward Emily, who was watching them both curiously. Always wanting to help. Jack didn't answer immediately, letting the memory sink in. When was the last time he and his father had discussed anything besides work? Did Grandma make sauce too? Emily asked, breaking the tension. Like Mommy? Richard smiled, a genuine smile Jack hadn't seen in years. Yes, she was Italian. She said the secret was cooking with love, Emily finished enthusiastically, just like Mommy used to say. The rest of the afternoon flowed in a surprisingly natural way. Richard shared stories about Jack's grandmother, about Sunday family gatherings that became rarer as the business grew. Emily, in turn, told him about her mother and the restaurant. You know, son, Richard said, helping Jack tidy the kitchen after Emily took the twins for their bath. When you said you wanted to buy an abandoned restaurant, I thought it was just another investment. But now I get it. Jack raised an eyebrow. Get what? That maybe you're fulfilling the dream I never had the courage to pursue, his father answered, surprising him. Your grandmother always wanted to open a restaurant. I chose the safe path of business, and little by little, we lost something important along the way. Jack really looked at his father then, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time in years, not the successful businessman, but a man who might also have had long-forgotten dreams. It's never too late to start over, Dad, he said softly. Emily teaches me that every day. Richard smiled, a smile so similar to Emily's when she spoke of her mother. You know what else she's teaching you? How to be a better father than I was. Dad. It's true, son. And I'm proud of you for it. Just then, Emily re-entered the kitchen with the twins, both now clean and in pajamas. Grandpa, she said naturally, as if Richard had always been part of their lives. Do you want to stay for dinner? We made too much sauce anyway. The look father and son exchanged spoke more than 1,000 words. I'd love to, Richard replied, his voice husky. Later, after his father left and the children were sleeping, Jack stood on the balcony of his penthouse, looking out over the glowing city. Flavors of Memory wouldn't just be another business in his portfolio. It would be a legacy, not just for Emily and the twins, but for that little boy who once dreamed of cooking like his grandmother. His phone vibrated with a message from his father. How about a family lunch on Sunday? Your mother is eager to meet her grandchildren. Jack smiled, realizing his real dream had never been just to own a restaurant. It was to have a family. And in some magical way, now he had both. The night wind carried the lingering aroma of tomato sauce, and Jack could have sworn he felt the smiles of two women, his grandmother and Linda, blessing this new beginning. Because sometimes, the most beautiful dreams are those that lie dormant in our hearts, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The knock on the door came on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, while Jack was trying to convince Thomas to eat his vegetable puree. Emily was at school, part of the routine they'd established in recent weeks, and Theo was sleeping soundly in his new crib. Mr. Morrison, a serious female voice greeted him as soon as he opened the door. I'm Mariana Santos from Child Protective Services, and this is Dr. Ricardo Mendez from the family court. May we come in? Jack's heart froze. He knew this moment would come. It was impossible to hide 3 children forever, especially after enrolling Emily in school. Still, the reality of it hit him like a punch in the gut. Sure, he replied, keeping his voice calm as he invited them into the living room. Sorry about the mess. I was in the middle of lunch with Thomas. The social worker surveyed the room with analytical eyes, toys organized in colorful baskets, recent photos of the children on the walls, Emily's drawings proudly displayed on the stainless steel fridge. The apartment that once resembled a design showroom had clearly transformed into a home. Mr. Morrison, Dr. Ricardo began, adjusting his glasses, we received a report about 3 minors living under your care without proper legal guardianship. Could you explain the situation? Jack took a deep breath, settling Thomas in his arms. The baby, oblivious to the tension, was happily playing with his tie. I found the children in the basement of the restaurant I bought, he began, opting for complete honesty. Emily, the oldest, had been taking care of her brothers alone since their mother died. I couldn't just ignore their situation. And why didn't you inform the authorities right away? Mariana asked, taking notes on her clipboard. Emily was afraid they'd separate the siblings, Jack said, his voice quivering slightly. And then, well, they became my family. Dr. Ricardo frowned. I understand your concern, Mr. Morrison Futuan, but there are legal procedures that must be followed. You essentially took 3 children without proper authorization. Took them? A small but firm voice sounded from the door. Emily was there, still with her school backpack, her normally sweet eyes now flashing with indignation. Dad saved us. Emily! Jack stood up, surprised. She was supposed to be in school for 2 more hours. What are you doing home so early? I had a feeling, she replied, walking into the living room with the dignity of a little queen, and the teacher let me leave since I finished all my work. Mariana's expression softened as she addressed the girl. Hello, Emily. Can we talk for a moment? Emily nodded, sitting next to Jack and taking his hand. Ask whatever you want. But first, I want to say one thing. Dad is the best thing that's happened to us since Mommy went to heaven. For an hour, Emily answered every question with a maturity that surprised even Jack. She spoke of her mother's illness, how she learned to care for the twins, the months they'd spent alone in the restaurant's basement. And how is it living with Mr. Morrison? Mariana asked. He's our dad now, Emily corrected gently. At first, he didn't know how to do much, not even how to make a baby bottle. She laughed, making Jack blush. But he learned it all. He cooks for us, reads us bedtime stories, helps me with homework. And his work, Dr. Ricardo interjected. It must be difficult to juggle a demanding job with 3 small children. He works a lot, Emily admitted, but he's always home for dinner with us. And when he has an important meeting, he sets up his computer on the kitchen table so he can still be close to us while he works. Jack felt tears welling in his eyes. How could this tiny child be so observant, so articulate? Mr. Morrison, Mariana turned to him. You understand we'll need to open a formal guardianship proceeding, right? There will be regular home visits, evaluations, reports. I'll do whatever it takes, Jack interrupted, his voice resolute. I'll hire the best lawyers, submit to any evaluation, follow every procedure, but I'm not giving up on my kids. Emily squeezed his hand, and Thomas chose that moment to giggle loudly, breaking the tension in the room. Dad, Emily whispered, show them the twins' room. And my school notebook. And the pictures from Sunday lunch at Grandpa's house. For another 2 hours, Jack and Emily showed the visitors around the apartment, displaying evidence of their family life. The twins' bedroom decorated with a safari theme, Emily's study area with neatly organized schoolwork, recent photos with the grandparents showing a loving extended family. When they finally left, Mariana and Dr. Ricardo left a stack of paperwork and a list of procedures to follow, but also a hint of hope. Emily is an extraordinary child, Mariana commented before leaving, and it's clear there's a bond between you. It won't be an easy process, Mr. Morrison, but we'll work to keep this family together. After the door closed, Emily threw herself into Jack's arms, finally letting her mature facade slip. They won't take us away, right, Dad? Jack hugged her tightly, feeling her small body tremble. No, Princess, they won't. I promise I'll fight with everything I have to keep our family together. I know, she whispered against his chest, because you're our real dad now, not on paper, but in our hearts. And that's what matters, right? That night, after the children were asleep, Jack stayed up reading the documents the authorities had left. Court proceedings, psychological evaluations, supervised visits. The path would be long and complicated. But when he looked into the room where his children slept, because that's what they were now, his children, he knew he would face any battle. Because sometimes families aren't made by blood or paper, but by choice and love. And he had chosen to love these 3 children the moment he found them in that dark basement. Now he just needed to show the world that sometimes the strongest bonds are the ones the heart chooses to create. Flavors of memory was unrecognizable. The windows, now clean, let in the sunlight that played on the dust motes stirred up by the renovation. Workers came and went, carrying supplies and tools, while Jack and Emily supervised every detail of the transformation. "This is where Grandma Maria's table used to be," Emily explained, pointing to a specific corner of the dining room. "She came every Sunday and always brought me coffee candies." Jack made a mental note, already picturing a discreet plaque marking that spot, Grandma Maria's table. Preserving these memories was important, building a bridge between the past and the future they were creating. "What about wall colors?" he asked, watching Emily examine paint samples with the seriousness of a professional decorator. "Which do you think your mom would have chosen?" Emily tilted her head thoughtfully. "Mommy always said a restaurant should be as cozy as a hug. She'd like this soft yellow that looks like sunlight." In the center of the dining area, Thomas and Theo played in their makeshift playpen, shielded from the dust and chaos of the renovation. The twins, nearly 2 years old now, were growing more active and curious each day. "Dad," Emily called suddenly, excited. "Look at Thomas." Jack turned just in time to see Thomas pulling himself up on the playpen rail and taking his first tentative steps. Pride and emotion swelled within him as he filmed the moment on his phone. "That's it, champ," he encouraged, watching the little boy determinedly walk toward a toy. Not to be outdone, Theo soon followed his brother's example, prompting excited cheers from Emily. "They're walking, both of them." Jack put his phone away, strangely overwhelmed. It was as if the twins' first steps symbolized something bigger, the progress of their entire family, the start of a new phase. "You know," he said, picking up the 2 babies while Emily danced around them, "this restaurant is growing along with you." It was true. Every day, flavors of memory gained more life. The industrial kitchen was being fully modernized, but Jack insisted on keeping some original features. Like the old pizza oven Emily claimed made the best margaritas in town. "Dad," Emily called, more serious now, holding a notebook decorated with food stickers, "I made a list of dishes that must be on the menu." Jack smiled, placing the twins back in their playpen and sitting with her at one of the new tables. "Tell me everything." "First, Mommy's gnocchi," she began, consulting her carefully handwritten notes. "It has to be exactly how she made it, with fresh tomato sauce and basil from the garden." "From the garden?" Jack asked, surprised. Emily nodded firmly. "Yes, we need to have an herb garden like she used to have. It'll go out back," she said, pointing to the outdoor area Jack had planned to convert into a parking lot. He immediately took out his own notebook and changed his plans. The parking space could be smaller. A garden of fresh herbs was far more important. "What else is on the list?" For an hour, Emily described every special dish her mother used to prepare. Jack was impressed by her precise memory of ingredients and techniques. It was as though Linda had left a living culinary legacy through her daughter. "And here," she pointed to a colorful drawing at the end of the notebook, "is how the walls should be decorated, with pictures of happy families just like before." Jack studied the drawing, a surprisingly detailed depiction of the dining area, with frames on the walls and smiling people at the tables. In one corner, she had drawn the 4 of them, Jack, herself, and the twins. "It's perfect," he said, feeling a lump in his throat, "but I think we need to add a few more people to this drawing." Emily tilted her head, curious. "Who?" "Grandpa Richard and Grandma Helena, for starters. And maybe we should put a picture of your mom in a special place so she'll always be part of the restaurant." Emily's eyes filled with unshed tears, but her smile was radiant. "She already is, Dad. She's in every recipe, in every memory, and now she's also in the love you put into everything you do here." Jack hugged his daughter, marveling at her wisdom. In the playpen, the twins continued their toddling adventures, each step more certain than the last. The sound of their laughter mixed with the renovation noise, creating a symphony of progress and joy. The restaurant's transformation was more than just a renovation. It was the building of a shared dream, a legacy blending past and present, Linda's memories with the new stories they were creating. That night, after tucking the children into bed, Jack returned to the restaurant alone. In the silence of the partially renovated space, He could almost hear echoes of past laughter mingling with the new. He imagined future evenings with a full house, Emily helping in the kitchen, the twins running between tables, families forging special memories here. On a newly painted wall in that soft, sun-like yellow, Jack hung the first frame, a photo of Linda that Emily treasured. In it, she smiled radiantly, wearing a white apron in the restaurant's kitchen. "We're taking good care of your legacy," he whispered to the photo, "and your precious ones too." As if in response, a gentle breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the aroma of basil Emily had insisted on planting earlier that afternoon in a few makeshift pots. It was just the beginning of the herb garden she envisioned, but it was already a promise of the future. Jack smiled, thinking of how life takes curious turns. Months ago he was a lonely man buying an abandoned restaurant on a whim. Now he was a father of 3, transforming not just the physical space of flavors of memory, but also his own heart. The twins' first steps that afternoon were only the beginning. As a family, they were all learning to walk together, sometimes stumbling, but always getting back up, always moving forward. And the restaurant, with its freshly painted walls and carefully preserved memories, would be the perfect backdrop for all the stories yet to unfold. Because in the end, that was what Flavors of Memory was all about. Not just food, but love, family, and the precious moments that turn a simple restaurant into a magical place where memories are made and preserved, where past and present meet in harmony, and where an unlikely family found its place in the world. It started with a cough. Jack barely noticed at first. "Kids catch colds all the time," Emily had explained with her premature wisdom. But when Theo woke in the middle of the night, burning with fever and struggling to breathe, Jack's world collapsed. "Emily!" he called, panic in his voice as he held Theo in his arms. "His fever's not going down!" Emily appeared at the bedroom door, rubbing sleepy eyes. One look at her brother, and she sprang into action. "Hospital," she said firmly. "Now, I'll take care of Thomas. You take Theo." Jack hesitated for a split second, his heart torn among his children. "But, Dad," Emily cut him off, her small voice carrying surprising strength. "Theo needs you now. I've taken care of them alone before, remember? I can manage Thomas for a few hours." In that moment, looking at his 5-year-old daughter who seemed to have aged decades in seconds, Jack felt a mix of pride and pain so intense it almost suffocated him. "I'll call Grandpa to come stay with you," he said, already dialing as he cradled Theo's feverish little body against his chest. The drive to the hospital was a blur of city lights and silent prayers. Theo alternated between crying and drowsiness, his breathing increasingly labored. Jack had never felt so helpless. In the pediatric ER, the hours dragged on like decades. Pneumonia, the doctors said, severe enough to require admission. Jack stood by, paralyzed, as they attached monitors and tubes to his tiny son. "Mr. Morrison," a nurse gently touched his arm, "I need the patient's information." Jack blinked, trying to focus. His phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket, texts from Emily asking for updates, from his father confirming he was with the kids, from Sandra trying to reschedule important meetings. "Theobaldo Morrison?" he started, then stopped. He realized he didn't know his son's exact date of birth. What kind of father didn't know something so basic? Guilt washed over him like a wave. He'd been so focused on being a provider, on renovating the restaurant, on proving to the authorities he could be a good dad. Had he missed the signs? Should he have noticed Theo was falling ill sooner? His phone buzzed again. Another message from Emily. "Dad, take a deep breath. Remember what Mommy always said. Family love heals everything. Theo is strong. You are, too." The simple words of his daughter struck Jack like a beam of light in the darkness. He took a deep breath, finally letting the tears he hadn't realized he was holding fall. Night turned into day, and day into another night. Jack stayed by Theo's side, watching every breath, every movement. The doctors spoke of slow but steady progress. The fever was subsiding, breathing improving gradually. Emily visited every afternoon after school, always bringing new drawings to decorate Theo's hospital room. She told him stories about the restaurant, about how Thomas missed him, about the plans they had for when he came back home. "You know, Dad," she said on one of those visits, methodically arranging the drawings on the wall, "when I was little and got sick, Mummy always said worrying doesn't cure anyone. What cures is love, care, and chicken soup." Jack smiled weakly, marveling at how strong his daughter was. "Your mom always seemed to know what to say." "Just like you," Emily replied simply. "You always know what we need, too. You just forget to take care of yourself sometimes." The perceptive comment caught him off guard. It was true. He hadn't looked in a mirror in days, barely eaten. He was functioning on autopilot. "When did you get so wise?" he asked, pulling her into a hug. "I learned from you," she said, snuggling against him. "You taught me that being strong doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what needs to be done even when you are scared." That night, after Emily left with her grandpa, Jack watched Theo sleep. His tiny child, so fragile and yet so resilient. The tubes had been removed, and his breathing, though not perfect, was much better. "You know, son," he whispered, holding Theo's little hand, "before I met you, I thought I knew everything about success. I had money, power, respect in the business world. But you guys, you taught me what really matters." Theo shifted in his sleep, his tiny fingers tightening around Jack's hand. Jack continued, "You taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the ability to keep going despite it. That strength doesn't come from how much you can control, but how much you can love. And most of all, you taught me that family isn't something you have. It's something you build day by day with love and patience." The next morning, Theo opened his eyes and, for the first time in days, smiled. A small, tired smile. But for Jack, it was like watching the sun rise after the longest night. "Dada," Theo called, his voice hoarse but clear. Jack felt his heart expand in his chest. "I'm here, son, I'll always be here." When Emily arrived for her daily visit, she found father and son asleep together. Jack awkwardly bent over in the hospital chair, Theo's tiny hand clutching his father's finger. Quietly, she took out her sketchbook and began to draw the scene. "Mommy," she whispered as she sketched, "I think you'd be proud. Dad still gets lost sometimes, but he loves us as much as you did. And now he knows he doesn't have to be perfect, he just has to be here." Outside the hospital, New York carried on in its frenetic pace. Meetings were held without Jack, important decisions were postponed, the restaurant renovation waited. But in that hospital room, the true priorities had become clear, because sometimes you have to almost lose something precious to understand its true value. And Jack Morrison, the man who once measured success by numbers and acquisitions, now measured it by smiles, hugs, and the small daily victories, like a sick child's first night of peaceful sleep, the quiet support of a wise beyond her years daughter, and the growing certainty that no challenge was too big when you had enough love to face it. Dawn painted the New York sky with pink and orange hues when Jack unlocked the doors of flavors of memory. The scent of fresh paint mingled with the smell of newly brewed coffee, a ritual he had established since Theo returned from the hospital. Every morning before the renovation began, Jack brought the kids to check the progress, turning what could have been just another construction site into a family tradition. "Dad, look!" Emily exclaimed, running toward the newly built area designed especially for the children. "The walls of the memory corner are already painted." The memory corner, as Emily had dubbed it, was a cozy nook near the kitchen where Jack planned to create a safe space for the twins to play while he and Emily worked in the restaurant. But it was more than that, a tribute to their story, with an entire wall dedicated to photos and keepsakes. "How about we hang Mommy's first photo of the restaurant here?" Jack suggested, watching Emily survey the freshly painted wall with a critical eye. "No," she replied after a moment of thought. "I think we should hang our first photo together from the day you found us here. Mommy's photo should go up there," she pointed to the space above the bar, "where everyone can see her smiling and looking after us." Jack felt his heart clench. Even in the smallest details, Emily showed a deep understanding of family and belonging. The twins, now fully recovered, explored the space with the curiosity of almost 2-year-olds. Theo, still a bit cautious since his illness, followed Thomas closely as they investigated every corner of the half-finished restaurant. "Watch the stairs," Emily admonished automatically, her protective instinct always on alert. But then she stopped, looking at Jack with a timid smile. "Sorry, Dad. Sometimes I forget I don't have to be the grown-up anymore." Jack knelt down to her level. "Hey, you never need to apologize for caring about your brothers, but now we can take care of them together, okay?" She nodded, but Jack noticed a shadow pass over her face. In recent days, since Theo's recovery, he'd noticed subtle changes in her behavior. Moments of irritability, slight defiance, small challenges to his authority. "How about you help me decide where to put the tables?" he suggested, trying to distract her. "You know better than anyone how they used to be arranged." Her face lit up for a moment, but then the shadow returned. "What if we do it wrong? What if it doesn't end up like it was before?" "Emily," Jack began gently, "it doesn't need to be exactly the same. We can create something new, something ours, while keeping the best memories of the past." She considered his words, fiddling with the hem of her shirt, a gesture Jack recognized as a sign of anxiety. "But what if—" She hesitated, her voice small. "What if Mommy wouldn't like the changes?" Ah, that was it. Jack finally understood what was behind Emily's recent behavior. The restaurant renovation was making the idea of moving on too real, of creating something new, and with it the fear of betraying her mother's memory. "Come here," he said, sitting on one of the steps and pulling her onto his lap. "You know what I think your mom would have loved more than anything?" Emily shook her head, nestling against his chest. "To see you happy, to see this place full of life again. To know her recipes would continue bringing joy to people, but now with our special touch too." "Our special touch?" she asked, curiosity piqued. "Yep, like that amazing idea you had for a kid's menu with fun names, or the herb garden we're planting outside, even bigger than the original. They're changes, but good ones, that keep the spirit of what your mum created alive." Just then, laughter echoed through the space. Thomas and Theo had discovered the echo their voices made in the empty dining area and were trying out different sounds. "Da, da!" Thomas suddenly shouted, his voice resonating clearly. Jack and Emily froze. "Dada," Theo repeated, not to be outdone. "Dad," Emily tugged at his arm, excited. "They said it. They called you." Jack could barely believe it. His heart felt like it might burst from joy. The twins, realizing the reaction they had provoked, started chanting Dada repeatedly, interspersed with giggles. "See?" Emily commented, eyes shining. "Even they know you're our real dad now." The morning went on with a renewed energy. Emily, her mood vastly improved, enthusiastically shared her ideas for the restaurant. Each suggestion balanced memory and innovation perfectly, keeping the checkered tablecloths, but adding a modern flair with fresh flowers, preserving Linda's classic dishes, but creating new recipes inspired by them. "And here," she explained, sketching in her notebook, "we can have a wall with photos of customers, just like Mommy did, but also with new pictures of the families who come now." Jack watched in awe as his daughter struck the perfect balance between honoring the past and embracing the future, a lesson he himself was still learning. The twins continued roaming around, now occasionally calling Dada whenever they wanted his attention. Each time the word echoed in the restaurant, Jack felt his heart expand a little more. "You know," Emily said thoughtfully while helping organize some new plates that had arrived, "I think I understand now why Mommy loved this place so much." "Why is that?" Jack asked, genuinely curious. "Because it's not just a restaurant, it's our home," she said simply. "It's where our family began, where you found us, and where we'll make other families happy too." Jack had to fight back tears. How could this small child articulate such profound feelings so clearly? The rest of the day was a blur of activity. Jack alternated between supervising the renovation, playing with the twins, and helping Emily with her restaurant ideas. At some point, his father arrived with lunch and they had an impromptu picnic in the middle of the partially finished dining area. "It's looking amazing, son," Richard commented, taking in the progress. "Linda would be proud." "It's not just my doing," Jack replied, watching Emily teach the twins to say Grandpa. "They taught me what really matters in a home." As the sun began to set, bathing the restaurant in golden light through the new windows, Jack realized Emily was right. Flavors of Memory wasn't just a business project or a way to honor Linda's memory. It was the place where his family started, where a lonely man found his purpose, where 3 orphaned children found a new dad, and where together they were building something bigger than themselves. Watching Emily doze off on the new office couch, the twins already sound asleep in their makeshift playpen, Jack reflected on how much his life had changed. Once, success was measured in numbers and acquisitions. Now it was measured in smiles, hugs, and small daily triumphs. These children had taught him unconditional love wasn't something you decided to feel. It was something that happened to you, completely transforming you, making you want to be a better person every day. It was getting up at night to check if Theo was breathing okay, having patience when Emily tested boundaries, celebrating every new word from the twins as if it were the biggest achievement in the world. His phone vibrated in his pocket, another email about an important meeting. But for the first time, Jack felt no urgency to respond. Here, in this half-renovated restaurant with his 3 kids sleeping peacefully, he was exactly where he needed to be. Because sometimes a home isn't made of walls and furniture. It's made of memories and dreams, of conquered challenges and shared love. It's made of small moments like this, when the sun sets after a day's work, and you realize you've built not just a physical space, but a place where hearts can grow and souls can heal. Flavors of Memory was becoming much more than a reopened restaurant. It was a living testament to how love can change lives, how families can be formed in the most unexpected places, and how sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as challenges. Jack carefully lifted Emily into his arms, trying not to wake her. "Ready to go home," he whispered. "We're already home, Dad," she murmured sleepily. "This is our home too." And it was true. Because a home, Jack had learned, isn't just where you live. It's where your heart finds peace, where your soul finds purpose, and where love can turn even the simplest space into something magical and special. That was what Flavors of Memory was becoming, not just a renovated restaurant, but a living symbol of how love can build bridges between the past and the future, between old memories and new dreams, between lonely hearts that find each other and create something extraordinary together. The rain fell softly over New York that Wednesday afternoon, creating a gentle rhythm against the newly installed windows of Flavors of Memory. Jack Morrison was alone in the restaurant, taking advantage of a few hours of silence while Emily was at school and the twins were napping under Sandra's watchful eye. The old office was the last area to be organized before the next phase of the renovation. Piles of yellow documents cluttered the sturdy wooden desk that, Jack discovered, had been custom-built by Linda's father decades earlier. He was sorting through old contracts when a folder slipped from behind a metal file cabinet. As it fell, an envelope tumbled out, bearing the elegant handwriting Jack recognized from Linda's recipe notebooks, her signature, clear and sure, like Emily had described. Carefully, almost reverently, Jack opened the envelope. The official paper still felt crisp, as though it had been waiting for this moment. His eyes scanned the text, each word striking him like a physical blow. "I, Linda Santos, being of sound mind, hereby leave the restaurant Flavors of Memory and all belongings associated with it to my children, Emily, Thomas, and Theobaldo Santos." The world seemed to stop. Jack read the document multiple times, each reading revealing more details that made his heart clench. Linda had filed this will only 2 weeks before passing away. She named not just the restaurant, but all its recipes, the commercial name, even the old furniture he'd carefully stored during renovation. His hands trembled as he picked up the phone. Mr. Oliveira, the agent who brokered the sale, was still in his contacts. "Mr. Oliveira? Jack Morrison here. I need to know exactly how the sale of Flavors of Memory was conducted." The conversation that followed revealed a web of deceit and omissions. Linda's cousins, who sold the restaurant, claimed to be the only heirs. The will had never been presented during the probate process, but we did all the legal checks, the agent protested. There was no record of the will anywhere. Because it was hidden here, Jack murmured, more to himself than to the agent. Someone didn't want it found. After hanging up, Jack stood motionless, letting the events of the past months flood his mind. He recalled the first time he saw the restaurant from his office window, the night he discovered the children in the basement, every moment leading up to this. His eyes roamed around the renovated office. The walls, now painted a soft green Emily had chosen, were lined with old photos of the restaurant they'd unearthed during cleanup. In one Davy, Linda beamed proudly, pregnant with the twins, with a toddler Emily by her side in the kitchen. The sound of small footsteps in the corridor startled him from his thoughts. Emily stood at the door, still in her school uniform, watching him with that intensity that sometimes scared him. "Dad," she asked softly. "You're crying." Jack hadn't realized tears were streaming down his face. He tried to hide the document, but something in Emily's gaze made him pause. "That's Mommy's handwriting," she said, coming closer. "I recognize it. She did those pretty loops on the L." Jack looked at his daughter, because that's who Emily was now, his daughter in every sense but legally, and felt his heart break. How could he keep this from her? How could they keep building a family on a lie, even if it was by omission? "Come here, Princess," he said, pulling out a chair. "We need to talk about something important I found." Emily sat, her legs swinging above the floor. Jack noticed she clutched her backpack a little tighter, her telltale sign of anxiety. Gently, he explained what the document meant, translating the legal language into terms a 5-year-old could grasp. Emily listened intently, her eyes never leaving his face. "So, the restaurant belongs to us?" she asked after a long silence. "Yes, legally, it belongs to you and your brothers." To Jack's surprise, Emily smiled. "Mommy always said Flavors of Memory was magical," she said, "that it had a way of bringing the right people together at the right time." "What do you mean?" "She met my real dad here," Emily explained. "He was a customer, and you found us here too." She paused, fiddling with the edge of her skirt. "But you're more of a dad than he ever was. He left when he found out about the twins. You stayed." Jack felt his heart constrict. It was the first time Emily mentioned her biological father. "Mommy wasn't sad when she talked about him," Emily went on. "She said some people come into our lives just to bring gifts, like my brothers, and others come to stay, like you." At that moment, the office door opened again. It was Mrs. Cooper, the lady from the corner convenience store who had helped the children during those months on their own. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I heard voices and—" "Oh, the will." Jack stood abruptly. "You knew about it." Mrs. Cooper entered, closing the door gently behind her. Her usually cheerful face looked somber. "Linda showed it to me in her last week," she explained, taking a seat. "She was so weak, but insisted on telling me everything. She said her cousins were pressuring her to sell, but she wanted to make sure it stayed with the kids." "Why didn't you bring the document forward when she passed?" Jack asked, trying to keep the accusation out of his tone. "I searched for days," Mrs. Cooper said, tears gathering in her eyes. "Linda told me it was in a safe place in the office, but when I came to look, it was gone. The cousins showed up the day after the funeral with the sale paperwork. There was nothing I could do but look after the children the best I could." Emily, who had been silent, suddenly jumped up from the chair. "Wait here," she cried, darting out of the office. She returned minutes later, dragging her old school backpack. "Remember you asked me once why I still carry my old backpack when you bought me a new one?" she asked Jack. "This is why." Carefully, Emily opened a hidden pocket sewn into the bottom of the bag. From it, she pulled out an envelope identical to the one Jack had found. "Mommy gave me 2 copies," she explained. "She told me to keep it safe. I couldn't really read when she gave it to me, but I knew it was important." Jack and Mrs. Cooper exchanged shocked looks. Linda hadn't left anything to chance. She had made 2 copies, ensuring at least one would survive. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Jack asked gently. Emily bit her lip. "At first, I didn't know what it was. Then I got scared." "Scared of what, Princess?" "That if you found out the restaurant belonged to us, you wouldn't want to be our dad anymore," she admitted in a small voice. "That you'd think we just wanted your money." Jack felt as though someone had punched him in the gut. He pulled Emily into his arms and hugging her tightly. "Never," he said firmly. "Never think that. You're my children, no matter who owns the restaurant or anything else." In the days that followed, news of the discovered will spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. But instead of the scandal Jack feared, he found support. Mr. Phillips, the old maitre d', was the first to show up, carrying a photo album from the restaurant's glory days. "Linda had a gift," he said, showing the pictures to Jack and Emily. "Not just for cooking, but for people. She always knew exactly what each customer needed, even when they didn't know themselves." The photos depicted a vibrant, lively restaurant. In one, Linda taught a very young Emily how to make dough. In another, she stood pregnant with the twins, surrounded by customers who felt more like friends. Mrs. Nelson, a retired teacher who used to have lunch at the restaurant every day, brought her own memories. "Linda served me vegetable soup for a whole month when I lost my husband," she recounted, teary-eyed. "She said good food heals the soul, and you know what? She was right." One by one, neighbors and former customers began to appear, each with a story to share, a memory to revisit. Flavors of Memory, they said, was never just a restaurant. It was a gathering place, a source of comfort, a piece of the neighborhood's heart. "And now," Mrs. Cooper declared during one of the impromptu meetings that began to happen daily, "it's becoming exactly that again, thanks to you, Jack." The box for written testimonials she placed at the entrance was overflowing with letters of support. Sandra, who initially questioned the wisdom of revealing the will, now coordinated a social media campaign that was touching hearts all over the city. Amidst all this, Jack found another treasure in the original envelope, an unopened letter from Linda. "To whoever finds this will, if you are reading this, it means I'm no longer here to care for my children. Flavors of Memory belongs to them by right, not just legally, but because this place holds the essence of our family. Emily, my little chef, was practically born within these walls. Her first steps were taken in this kitchen. Her first words were, 'More dough.' She has the gift not just for cooking, but for caring about others, for seeing beyond what's on the surface. Thomas and Theo, my angels I barely got to know yet love with all my heart, are also part of this story. I spent my pregnancy here, talking to them while I cooked, dreaming of the day they'd run around the tables. Yes, the restaurant is theirs, but more important than walls or furniture is the love this place represents. If you're reading this, I hope you're someone who understands that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't those we can possess, but those we can love. I ask whoever finds this document to look at my children and see not a burden or responsibility, but a treasure. To understand that Flavors of Memory is not just a business, it's a place where families are made, where hearts are healed, and where love is served with every dish. I'm also leaving my recipes, not just the ones written in the kitchen notebooks, but those only Emily knows, learned by my side since she was tall enough to stand on the special stool her grandfather made. I trust she'll know when and with whom to share them, and if you, the one reading this letter, are the right person, someone who sees beyond legal papers and recognizes the true worth of what I leave for my children, then you have my eternal gratitude. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is caring for someone else's children as if they were your own. With hope and love, 416. Linda Santos. Jack read the letter to Emily that night, after the twins had fallen asleep. She listened silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She knew," Emily repeated, "just as she had when they discovered the will. She knew you would find us, that you would really love us." "How could she have known?" Jack asked softly. "Because Mommy always said true love finds a way," Emily replied. "Like the smell of fresh bread guiding people to a bakery, or the aroma of tomato sauce making everyone want to come home." Jack pulled his daughter into a hug, marveling at her wisdom. The twins slept peacefully on the office sofa, oblivious to the drama unfolding around them. Occasionally, one of them mumbled "dada" in his sleep, a word that still made Jack's heart melt every time. Tomorrow he would face the lawyers. He'd have to explain everything to the authorities, the family court judge, everyone involved in the guardianship proceedings. It would be hard and scary, possibly the biggest battle of his life. But right now, with the scent of fresh basil drifting through the newly painted office, with Emily in his arms and the twins sleeping quietly, Jack knew he had made the right choice. Because Linda was right. The greatest treasures are the ones we can love. And he loved these children more than anything in the world, more than any restaurant or fortune. "Dad," Emily murmured sleepily, "read me that part again where Mommy talks about true love finding a way." Jack picked up the letter again, though he already knew the words by heart. As he read, Emily drifted off, a soft smile on her face. "Do you think she'd be happy?" Jack whispered, more to himself than to Emily. "With everything we're doing here." "She already is," Emily mumbled, half asleep. "That's why the basil is growing so well. Mommy always said plants only grow strong when there's love in the air." Jack smiled through tears. Tomorrow he would face the world. Lawyers, judges, authorities. It would be a difficult battle, perhaps the most important of his life. But tonight, in this moment, he was just a father holding his sleepy daughter, watching over his children, and feeling the love Linda had predicted fill every corner of this special place. Because in the end, Flavors of Memory wasn't just a restaurant or disputed property. It was the place where an unlikely family had found each other, where love and destiny intertwined in the most unexpected way, and where 3 children and a lonely man learned that sometimes the strongest bonds are those the heart chooses to create. And if Linda was watching from somewhere, Jack was certain she was smiling, satisfied that her plan had worked, because sometimes true love really does find a way, guided by the aroma of old memories and the promise of new stories yet to come. In light of all the evidence presented, this court recognizes the exceptional bond between the petitioner, Jack Morrison, and the minors, Emily, Thomas, and Theobaldo Santos. Considering the best interest of the children and the clear wishes of the late Linda Santos expressed in her will, I grant permanent custody of the children to Mr. Morrison, who will also serve as the legal administrator of Flavors of Memory until the heirs reach legal age. The judge's words echoed through the courtroom, but Jack could barely believe what he was hearing. Emily, sitting beside him, squeezed his hand tight. Behind them, the audience of neighbors, friends, and former customers erupted in applause. "We won, Dad," Emily whispered, her eyes bright with joy. Jack hugged her, tears of relief and happiness streaming down his face. Over the past few months, during the legal process, there were times he feared losing it all, but the community stood firmly by his side, testifying day after day to the true love binding this improbable family. 3 months later, the aroma of fresh tomato sauce filled the kitchen of Flavors of Memory. Jack adjusted the seasoning, following the precise directions of Emily, who supervised his technique from atop her special stool, a replica of the one her grandfather had made years ago. "More basil, Dad," she instructed, wearing her small white apron embroidered with her name, identical to the one she wore in the days of her mother. "And remember to stir with love." The restaurant was packed for its reopening night. Through the kitchen window, Jack could see the twins safely playing in the memory corner, where old and new photos told the story of 2 generations of Flavors of Memory. "Jack!" Sandra called from the kitchen door. "There's someone here to see the chef." He looked up, surprised to see his father, Richard, entering with a package in his hands. "I thought you should have this," Richard said, handing him the parcel. It was an old apron, yellowed with age. "It belonged to your grandmother. She always dreamed you'd follow in her footsteps in the kitchen one day." Jack felt his throat tighten as he recognized the fabric. How many times had he watched his grandmother wear this very apron while cooking Sunday lunch? "Put it on, Dad," Emily encouraged. "Then we'll match." With almost reverent care, Jack donned the apron. Somehow, it felt right, like every step on his journey had led him to this moment. The dining area was unrecognizable from the abandoned place Jack had first entered months ago. The walls, painted in the gentle yellow that looked like sunlight, showcased a mix of old and new photographs. Linda's picture presided over the bar, her radiant smile seeming to bless everyone who walked in. Checkered tablecloths covered every table, each occupied. Mrs. Cooper, in her usual corner seat, served samples of her famous homemade desserts, now officially on the menu. Mr. Phillips, once again the maitre d', guided guests with his signature elegance. "Dada! Dada!" the twins called in unison from the memory corner, proud of the block tower they had built. "It looks amazing, my loves," Jack responded, marveling at how quickly they were growing. They were no longer the frightened babies he'd found in the basement. They were confident toddlers, secure in the love of their rebuilt family. Back in the kitchen, Emily continued her vigilant supervision of the sauce's preparation. "You know, Dad," she said thoughtfully, "I think I understand why Mommy loved cooking so much. Why is that, Princess? Because when we cook with love, we're not just making food, we're making memories." She paused, tasting the sauce with the seriousness of a professional chef. "Like tonight, everyone out there is making new memories in our restaurant." "Our restaurant," Jack repeated softly. The phrase no longer carried the legal weight it once did. Now it was simply the truth. This place belonged to all of them, not because of documents or court rulings, but because they had built a family here. Service continued late into the evening. Jack was surprised at how natural it felt to be here, cooking with his daughter, hearing the twins' laughter, feeling the warmth and life that radiated from every corner of the restaurant. In a brief lull, he found Emily gazing at Linda's photo. "She would be proud of you," Jack said softly. Emily smiled, that wise smile that sometimes made Jack forget she was only 6. "She'd be proud of both of us, Dad. Mommy always said love is like a good recipe. It needs the right ingredients at the right time." Jack hugged his daughter, looking out at the bustling restaurant. Every table had a story, families celebrating, friends laughing, couples sharing special moments. It was exactly what Linda had described in her letter, a place where love was served alongside every dish. The twins toddled over, demanding attention. Jack scooped them up, heart overflowing as Emily recounted, for the 1,000th time, the story of how their family formed. "And then Dad found us, and the restaurant became magical again," she concluded, her eyes shining. Jack smiled, knowing it was he who had been found by 3 children who needed a father, by a restaurant that needed new life, by a love so great it transformed him completely. Flavors of Memory was alive once more, humming with the laughter of customers, the aroma of good food, and above all, the love of a family that chose each other. Because sometimes the best flavors don't come just from the right ingredients, but from the memories we create together. And there, in that kitchen, with Emily at his side and the twins safe in his arms, Jack Morrison finally understood the true meaning of success. It wasn't about money or power, but about the love we share and the lives we touch. Linda had been right. Flavors of Memory was magical, not because of the food, though it was excellent, but because of its ability to bring people together, to forge bonds, to transform strangers into family. And as the night wore on and more customers arrived, Jack knew they had achieved something extraordinary. Not just reopening a restaurant, but creating a real home, where every meal was served with an extra helping of love, and every new memory fit seamlessly alongside the old, like ingredients in a perfect recipe that would continue nourishing hearts for generations to come.